Well, thank you so much, Krithvi. Well, now, India sits at the helm of G20. It is a grouping of the richest economies across the globe. The world pins its hopes on India to chart an inclusive and decisive course. While we hope to put our stamp on the global agenda, India has also taken this opportunity to showcase our legacy, our history and culture by adorning 100 monuments across the nation with a G20 logo for a week. However, this celebration of India seems to have irked the opposition parties. Leading the charge was Congress's Jairam Ramesh, who quoted L.K. Advani saying that Modi is a brilliant event manager. Others in the opposition ranks united to say that India's G20 presidency is no big deal. They remind that the post is rotational and was inevitable no matter which government was governing at the time. Now, this criticism, not just of the Prime Minister but India's position at the global stage, has been strongly condemned by the Union Sarkar. They ask, in your quest to insult the Prime Minister, why are you berating our entire nation? But first, let's tell you how the opposition has dismissed India's chance at the G20 stage as mere hype.
This G20 summit is not a very great thing, but of course we didn't oppose. We are happy that India had got it in rotational basis. It's not an achievement. Earlier countries also had the same thing. So everything is event management for him and making the people fool.
चलो तो टर्न वाइज होता है, तुम इंडोनेशिया से हमारे को मिलेगी, यहाँ से हमारे को जाएगी, लेकिन हमारी परफॉर्मेंस कैसी रहेगी ये समय बताएगा।
ये कौन सी बड़ी बात है, हर देश बाई रोटेशन होता है। ये संगठनों का आपस का एक बहुत पुराना स्थापित परंपरा है, तो वही हो रही। अब चूंकि महंगाई पे बोल नहीं सकते, बेरोजगारी पे बोल नहीं सकते, आडवाणी जी ने जो कहा था वो सही कहा है। हमारे चेयरमैन ने जो कहा है मैं उसका अच्छा सा समर्थन करता हूं।
Well, the union government and BJP has lashed out, saying that the opposition forgets India's responsibility to showcase India globally, and that is a responsibility which must be shouldered by the Sarkar. Listen in.
अंतर्राष्ट्रीय जिम्मेदारी जो भारत के वैभव को विश्व के सम्मुख प्रस्तुत करने का हर हिंदुस्तानी को मौका देता है। अगर भारत का ये संस्कार, अगर भारत की ये रुचि, अगर भारत का ये संकल्प कांग्रेस पार्टी को नहीं भाता, तो इसमें आपको आश्चर्य नहीं होना चाहिए।
The important thing is that first ensure that every visitor, every tourist who comes goes back as a brand ambassador of India. Secondly, whatever we do, we should showcase the work that we've done in terms of development, in terms of roads, electricity, housing, etc. Tell them the huge transformation that has taken place due to the digital public good infrastructure that India has created. What India has done as a health pharmacy of the world, as a vaccine capital of the world, and lastly, that India is the mother of all democracy.
But perhaps it's not surprising that the G20 presidency has been linked to politics back home. From India's logo to its post, everything has been derided by the opposition. Let's remind you of how. Remember how they had rejected the G20 logo. You had Jairam Ramesh, Congress's MP, the one who had led the charge even back then. He had said BJP's symbol has become India's G20 logo, that BJP's bid to promote itself shamelessly is reflected in it. You also had Congress's Udit Raj coming out and saying that BJP has ended the distinction between the party and the government. Rashid Alvi of the Congress party also said that this shows that power lies with the BJP and not the government. They had also trivialized, the opposition had also trivialized India's presidency. Again, Jairam Ramesh, what did he say? He said that India gets its chance to hold the G20 summit in 2023. The summit is held in each member country in turn. Also, the Prime Minister was then tagged as an event manager, as we were just telling you earlier, where Jairam Ramesh said that the presidency is anyways rotational, and Advani ji himself was right in calling Modi a brilliant event manager. So let's also remind you, however, in the past, you had the entire world lauding India on certain occasions. But back home, the Prime Minister faced derision. The world, remember, had hailed India's vaccine Maitri. However, back home, the Prime Minister was targeted. Yashwant Sinha of the TMC had said that India sent more vaccines abroad than it was vaccinating its own citizens back home. Now remember when the world hailed India's COP26 wow about how India was showing and setting the tone for climate change combatment? Then you had Adhir Ranjan Chaudhary of the Congress's MP saying, don't know if this Pancha Amrit will solve the world's problems or not, mocking the vow which was made by India at that global stage. Prime Minister then gave a speech at the UNGA. However, back home again he was targeted. You had P. Chidambaram of the Congress party coming out and saying only a few seats were occupied when the Prime Minister addressed, and I'm actually disappointed that no one even applauded. These are the repeated attacks which have been coming in time and again. So let's open this up. Let's go across to our panelists. Joining us today on our show, Sanju Verma of the BJP, Dr. Anand Ranganathan, an author. You have Kamruzaman Chaudhary of the Congress party, Abbas Haider of the SP. You have Anirban Banerjee, a political analyst. Sanju Verma, I'm going to be coming to you first. I'll put across what the opposition has said. Do you think that the opposition is right when they say that BJP uses every opportunity to promote itself, be it the G-20 logo or even the presidency?
Meghna, let's be very clear. First and foremost, there was this entire controversy about using the lotus symbol, even as India assumed the G-20 presidency formally on the 1st of December, that is yesterday. So to naysayers, please be told that the BJP lotus symbol has 5 petals, and the one that is being used in G20 has 7 petals. I know this sounds very churlish and puerile, but besides the technical argument, don't forget that the 7 petals symbolize 7 continents and 7 musical notes, which the PM said in his address, saying that when the 7 musical notes come together, there is harmony, there is a blend, and there is togetherness, which should be the defining purpose of the G20 presidency of India. Because don't forget, India's G20 presidency comes against some very challenging backdrops. You've had 2 big black swan events, Meghna. Primarily the COVID pandemic, a pandemic for the first time in over 100 years. Then you had the Russia-Ukraine conflict. So be it climate goals, be it democracy under threat after what we saw in Afghanistan with the Taliban taking over, be it the fact that the world is polarized, between the pro-Russian and the anti-Russian camps, be it the fact that you have a vaccinating administration in the United States, which wants to buy oil from Russia, wants to impose sanctions, but does not want other nations to buy oil from Russia. Look at the mendacity, look at the hypocrisy, not only of the West, but of the opposition and the likes of Jairam Ramesh. I will just quickly ask him a couple of things in 20 seconds. Was the Congress happy when, thanks to Narendra Modi, the United Nations decided to celebrate the International Yoga Day in June? We started celebrating International Yoga Day since 2015. No. Was the Congress happy when Modi addressed the US Congress? No. Has the Congress been happy because of the WHO-sponsored Ayurvedic Global Center coming up at Jamnagar? No. Was the Congress happy when India joined the MTCR club? No. Was the Congress happy when India signed the Indo-Japanese civil nuclear agreement in 2015? No. Was the Congress happy when we signed the LEMOA in 2016? No. Was the Congress happy when we signed the COMCASA with the US in 2018? No. Was the Congress happy when we signed the BECA agreement to improve logistical military surveillance with the US in 2020? No.
I think you've made your point.
Is the Congress happy now that we are having the presidency of G20 in 2022? No. And in 10 seconds, don't forget, in January 2021, India formally became the non-permanent member of the UNSC for 2 full years, and we got the membership. We secured 184 of the 192 valid votes cast, and even then the Congress had a problem. मोदी विरोध में कांग्रेस आज भारत विरोधी बन चुकी है. That is the sum and
Is that true? Is that true? Kamruzaman Chaudhary, I'm going to come to you because very explicitly the External Affairs Minister, Dr. Jaishankar, had said as to India's role and India's roadmap for the G20 is going to be to become the voice of global south and to work to depoliticize the global supply of food, fertilizers, medical products at a time when world is looking towards India, at the time when India has this chance to leave behind its mark. Why is the Congress, in its quest to insult the Prime Minister, as the BJP says, berating India, berating even the nation?
Meghna, I believe you are not so confused as Sanju Verma out here about the role of the G20 and the purpose that was formed in 1999. You know, it has got limited G20 geopolitical jurisdiction out here. The basic purpose was to measure issues related to the global economy.
Yes, we are aware of that, and we are aware of the larger issues that the G20 will be looking at. I asked you a different question.
So, Meghna, let me finish first. You provided Sanju with at least uninterrupted time. Give me just half the time. Okay. The basic point out here is that if the Bharatiya Janata Party, who is ruling who is our India right now, issues full-page newspaper advertisement on 1st of December, the day when the Gujarat is going to the polls, there is a question to be asked. When the posters, banners are splashed all across Delhi, highlighting the G20 presidency when the municipal elections are going on, when the BJP's election symbol is put up on the logo of the G20, then there is a question out here. The intent is very clear. When we joined the G20 presidency of 99 till 2022. The presidency is bound to come, whether if not in 22, might have been in 24, 27. So it goes like that. Anybody out of the
it's not a big deal.
Countries that are there in the bloc will be a member. It's not a big deal. It has to be there. Now the basic question out here is that you are using a particular issue to market your political agenda within India. So that is the problem. You know why you want to project India as becoming a global power. We are very proud of that. But it has come over a sustained period of long interactions with other fellow countries in the world that India has attained this place. Sanju Verma should not be an ostrich with her head buried in the sand and say that, okay, India began and India
let's not have personal attacks and stick to the debate that we are having right now.
Start in 2014.
Dr. Ranganathan, I'll just come to you. Sanju Verma, I'll definitely let you counter him. I'll just let you counter him. Dr. Anand Ranganathan must come in right now because we need to go beyond the politics. There are times when you need to stop the politics. There are times when you need to understand what India hopes to do for the world. Anand Ranganathan, at a time when the world is looking at India to provide global solutions for some of the most pressing issues, how does it reflect on our image to have this kind of criticism of a democratically elected Prime Minister whose wit, whose grit has been hailed across the world, even including presidents, prime ministers who have said he is a man who has a mission?
Good evening, Meghna, and good evening to all my fellow panelists. Look, Modi can handle G20. Let the Congress worry about G23. For those not in the know, G20 has names like Biden, Sunak, Xi, Trudeau, while G23 has Ghulam Nabi Azad, Anand Sharma, Kapil Sibal, Huda, Manish Tiwari, PJ Kurian, Sandeep Dikshit, Raj Babbar, Bhattal and Waghela. In fact, there is poetic justice here because G23, the group, as you know, of Congress leaders who rebelled and collectively demanded a change in the Congress and the way it functioned, the G23 has now been reduced to G20. Azad, Prasada and Sibal have since quit the Congress. So भैया पहले अपना G20 संभाल लो, बाद में दुनिया के G20 की बात करना. And as far as Congress mocking the rotational presidency of G20 coming India's way, well, at least learn something from it. For decades, you refused to make your own party's presidency rotational. In fact, far from rotational, you made it fixed, like the pole star, namely the Nehru-Gandhi dynasty. Look, Meghna, India's presidency of G20 should be seen as a welcome step by all Indians, and therefore I am a little disappointed that the Congress and the communists are enraged by it. But then they would be, because possibly for the first time in our modern independent history, India is finally rising up to be truly independent and non-aligned. Not the sham non-aligned of the 70s and 80s, perhaps. That is what irritates the naysayers. Our stand on climate change is exceptional, much to our own cost and detriment, being a third world country. And yet, we believe in Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam, and the manner in which we have handled the Ukraine war and managed to see through our interests and expose the West's hypocrisy is praiseworthy. A far cry from the UPA days when we shamefully capitulated during the Sharm el-Sheikh agreement with terror state Pakistan and allowed the insinuation that we were fomenting trouble in Baluchistan. Just 30 seconds. What?
Right.
Air Chief Dhanoa is on record saying that the Indian Air Force wanted to bomb terror hideouts in Pakistan in the wake of 26/11, but was forbidden to do so by the then Prime Minister Manmohan Singh. Doubtless, not everything is perfect. Just 10 seconds. The way we are handling China leaves a lot to be desired. But then, as always, our handling of China is music to the ears of those who signed up an MOU with the Communist Party of China. Now, kaun the wo log?
I think the takeaway, however, from your answer is Congress पहले G23 को संभाले और उसके बाद G20 पे comment करे. However, having said that, yes, there is a lot to be desired. However, let me go across to Abbas Haider also, who's there. Abbas Haider, at a time when India is trying to showcase its history, we are showcasing the monuments, lighting up monuments. Even we had everyone coming out and saying how this is our duty. It's not just our responsibility, it's our duty towards the nation, for any government, towards the nation of India, to showcase what we have in our own country, our history, our culture, our heritage, as well as the development projects. Why are you grousing even that? Usme bhi publicity stunt, abhi aadat ban gayi hai kya?
See, first of all, nobody is mocking India's presidency of G20. And the most important thing is that every country gets presidency of every sovereign nation who's a member of G20 get presidency of G20. So
you're saying the same thing, that it's no big deal.
India is the 17th out of 19 sovereign nation and India is the 17th out of 19 G20 members. I mean, who is getting president? We are the third last to get the presidency. And by saying this, that we have never, in fact, in 2002, a ministerial level meeting of G20 happened in New Delhi. So, in other way, you are trying to demean Mr. Vajpayee, who was Prime Minister at that time, who concluded a meeting of G20 finance minister level in New Delhi. Now, the problem is, see, there are challenges which presidency of, first of all, presidency of G20 does not give you any formal power. This is one thing. But, there is a say in formulating the agenda of the meeting. One thing. Indonesia spent around $33 million of exchequer's money to, in 1 year of
showcasing their own country,
and we are also going to spend, I think, more than that. So we should just leave this facade of PR and event management, and we should see this as we have got this chance, and we should try to focus. We should look at our interests. Our interest should be.
Mr. Haider, it's very interesting because you yourself have said every country has taken the occasion to try and showcase their own nations. Why should India be any different? But Sanju Verma, I have a question for you, and I'm going to take across what Mr. Chaudhary had said to you. Let's not deny. Can we deny the political link?
I expect India is the biggest democracy in these G20 countries. We would have been the first one.
Which is why we also perhaps have the greater responsibility. Greater responsibility for us also to debate it.
We should try to build consensus among the member nations.
So let me take those questions across.
IMF, World Bank, WTO.
Let me take those questions across to Sanju Verma. I'll put those questions. Sanju Verma, can BJP deny the link to elections, as Congress as well as SP have said that they have linked it to elections? For instance, you had Prime Minister Modi gifting a Patan Patola dupatta of Northern Gujarat to the Italian Prime Minister. He gifted a Pithora artwork to the Australian Prime Minister. He gifted US President Joe Biden a Kangra miniature painting from Himachal Pradesh. All of that, interestingly, right ahead of these states going into poll. Is the opposition absolutely wrong that BJP does use every occasion to try and maximize its own poll prospects in upcoming elections?
Meghna, I don't wish to sound offensive,
But first, let me tell you, Kamruzaman Chaudhary said Sanju Verma is behaving like an ostrich. Even my work critics know that I am not an ostrich if nothing, and if I am an ostrich, Mr. Kamruzaman Chaudhary, you are Elvis Presley, but unfortunately you are not. So let's stop making odious comparisons. Now coming to your important question. Meghna, let's be very clear. Even if India had not assumed the G20 presidency, the opposition which is bereft of a common minimum program, the opposition which is fractious, everybody from Mamata Banerjee to Rahul Gandhi to Akhilesh Yadav, they cannot win elections in their own state and they're barely clinging on to power, but they dream and hallucinate of, Delhi ki gaddi mein raj kaise karenge. So issue किसी भी चीज का बनाना ये opposition की फितरत है. Now let me tell you the most important thing. If you look at the International Solar Alliance along with France's Emmanuel Macron, that was forged by Prime Minister Modi way back in 2015, immediately 1 year after coming to power as the Prime Minister. Then if you look at, the missile technology control regime, we actually became a member of the MTCR well ahead of China. I also remember, Meghna, in 2019 at the ASEAN summit in Bangkok, India refused to be a member of the RCEP, Regional Comprehensive Economic Partnership. And I remember all these people sitting on your panel who I debate with on umpteen occasions said, RCEP join nahi karke India ne bahut they've really taken the economy ages back. And today, actually, even leftist academicians who don't hold Modi's high regard, they are grudgingly admitting that by not joining the RCEP, we did a superb thing because joining the RCEP would have meant cutting.
So you're saying it's not linked to the elections? Not linked to the elections? All these decisions taken, not elected to decisions?
Meghna, I did not interrupt. I don't know. There was some gentleman who was, heckling me in between. No, I will just.
That's Mr. Chaudhary, but go ahead quickly. Can you complete your point?
Answer that vital question.
Yes, Mr. Chaudhary, please keep quiet. Thank you.
Mr. Chaudhary will come back to you.
Man to stop heckling me.
Go ahead, Sanju Verma.
We do not need bhashan or certificates on foreign policy from the Congress party, the less spoken about Rajiv Gandhi Sri Lanka policy, the less spoken about Nehruvian blunders with respect to Kashmir, the less spoken about Indira Gandhi not able to get back.
But it's quite one thing to criticize one's policy. I will disagree there. Let's discuss policies. Let's be open about criticizing a policy. I don't see a problem in that. It's okay to criticize your political opponent. Is it okay, however, to berate your own nation? And that's what we should stick to in this debate. Anirban Banerjee, I'd like to bring you in. It's important for us to understand because there's so much of criticism about what India has done around the G20. Do you think any other... I'll come back to you, Mr. Chaudhary. Anirban Banerjee must have a say as well. Anirban Banerjee, any other Prime Minister, any other government in his place, should they have done anything differently? Should they not have showcased the nation? Should they not spend to try and ensure, as it is being said, that every person who comes to India, looks at India for G20, returns as an ambassador for India? What's wrong in that?
See, the steps taken by the India government, which is led by the BJP right now, of course, in this G20 summit, it actually exposes very severely the inferiority complex of the party, that is the BJP. Because in spite of all the ballyhoo around the BJP being the largest, biggest party in the world, it is actually on very thin ice when it comes to domestic politics within India. And that is why it has reduced itself to a mere event management organization, it seems. I mean, why would you even post lotus, which is your election symbol, as the G20 summit symbol? And Madam Sanju Verma was counting petals. You think people count petals when they look at a picture or a symbol? If you ask any layman whether there are 5 petals or 4 petals, why are you heckling right now? Why are you heckling right now? Why are you heckling, professional heckler?
Let Anirban make his point.
Okay, so you're back to the lotus and not counting petals.
Stop this heckler.
Can we talk about what should have been done by any other Prime Minister? Why?
She was preaching others.
Let's not get political. Let's not get personal here. Anirban Banerjee, Sanju Verma, let Anirban finish making his point. Sanju Verma, let Anirban finish making his point. Quickly finish your point, Anirban.
Mr. Chauthi failed.
The point being, when it is G20 or an international summit, it is our country which is participating. It is not a party. Therefore, again, she's continuing to heckle. She's continuing to heckle. What is this?
Why did Chauthi fail is so right?
Therefore, the BJP, because of its inferiority complex, has nothing else to do but showcase its own party.
Anand Ranganathan,
nothing else to do but showcase its own party.
Dr. Ranganathan,
stop doing that.
Is the BJP showcasing its party? We are back to now counting petals and not looking at the larger perspective of what India could have done. Instead, it's down again to personal politics, to personal insults, and essentially the polls. Anand Ranganathan.
No, thank you. And can I please request the courtesy of at least a minute, because I need to make 3 or 4 points. First of all, with due respect to Sanju Verma ji, she is using a phrase invented by yours truly. So every time she says Chauthi fail, please give me 10 rupees. But as far as Anirban Da is concerned, I am shocked, because Anirban Da, what is our national flower? It is lotus. So every time you use lotus as a symbol, are you going to say that BJP is involved in this? I mean, is the BJP headquarters a lotus temple in Delhi? Number 2, ये मैं अब्बास साहब की बहुत कदर करता हूँ, एसपी से जो हैं, ये कह रहे हैं कि इंडोनेशिया ने $30 मिलियन स्पेंड किया इस पे। मैं आपको बता दूं, जो सफाई में एनुअल सफाई महोत्सव होता है, मुलायम सिंह जी के बर्थडे पे होता था, 334 करोड़ रुपए स्पेंड करते थे हॉलीवुड बॉलीवुड से बुला के एक्ट्रेसेस को, और आप और मायावती जो बीएसपी में थे, सबसे ज्यादा क्रिटिसाइज आपने किया था। तो पहले अपने गरीबान में झांक के देखो। नंबर 2, मैं आपके माध्यम से मेघना ये कहना चाहता हूं अब्बास साहब से कि इंडिया की मुस्लिम पॉपुलेशन 11% ऑफ द वर्ल्ड मुस्लिम पॉपुलेशन है। आपने क्या कभी कहा कि इंडिया शुड आल्सो बी अलाउड टू बी अ मेंबर ऑफ ऑर्गेनाइजेशन ऑफ इस्लामिक कॉन्फ्रेंस? बार बार पाकिस्तान हमें अंदर एंट्री के लिए मना करता है। आप एक कमेंट अपना बता दीजिए जहां पे आप कहें कि इंडिया शुड बी मेंबर ऑफ ओआईसी। जब इंडिया के हित की बात आती है तब आप पीछे हट जाते हैं, जब इंडिया आगे बढ़ रहा है तो आप क्रिटिसाइज कर रहे हैं। अब्बास साहब, ये गलत बात है। प्लीज, मैं आपकी कदर करता हूं, लेकिन प्लीज आप ये आंसर करिए।
Abbas, either go ahead.
No, can I just respond? Can I just respond? See, one thing, we are going to form the agenda of G20 this year. So I expect as a citizen of this country that we should not let China, come to India. We should not let Chinese Premier Xi Jinping come to India because they have illegally occupied 34,000 square kilometers of our territory. This is what my aspiration as an Indian citizen is. I mean, at a time.
Please give Dr. Ranganathan.
No, I have not said this. I have not said this. I am expecting my Prime Minister to show la to Chinese Premier. This is what I am expecting. I am expecting that if we are spending $33 million, more than that amount on the G20 summit, at least let not China come here, who has illegally occupied our territory. If Ukraine, who's not a member of G20, have let
China not attend any of the meeting of G20,
don't please test the intelligence of our viewers as well. Our viewers will understand if you are not answering to specific questions. Anand Ranganathan asked you a direct question, आप उस पे बोलिए, सैफे महोत्सव पे बोलिए.
अब्बास साहब, $30 million is 240 crores. You spent 340 crores on a festival where you invited Bollywood actors and actresses to dance.
Is that not a publicity stunt?
This is the amount that Indonesia spent. I'm not talking about the Indian amount. This would be 3-4 times higher at a time when India's foreign debt has increased 8.2% in just 1 year. It has reached 62,000 crore mark in just 1 year.
Abbas Haider,
so much amount.
We gave you the time to answer specific charges. You could have done your party a good deed by answering them. You don't want to. You want to dodge it? Okay, fine. Sanju Verma, you had a point quickly. Let me bring in Sanju Verma. She had a point. Hopefully she will answer some of the direct questions. Let's not go round and round. Sanju Verma, come in.
Forget about past.
Sanju Verma,
forget about past.
Please, may I come in now?
Yes, Sanju Verma, go ahead.
been waiting for this presidency from past 18 years.
हो गया अब्बास हैदर जी, आपको जो पूछा आपको बोलना नहीं था, आप संजू वर्मा को सुनना नहीं है, सुन तो लीजिए संजू वर्मा.
Okay. Meghna, people who sit here and give a bhashan to the BJP on China, this is the same lot which has till today not come clean on the fact that at the 2008 Beijing Olympics, on what grounds did Sonia Gandhi go there as the official guest of Xi Jinping? Was Sonia Gandhi then holding any constitutional post? No. What was the MOU that was signed between the Congress party and the CCP? There have been no details forthcoming from the Congress party on that.
Details are not known for that.
Don't give us a bhashan. Please let me finish in 20 seconds. China के बारे में हमको वो लोग भाषण देते हैं who refuse to acknowledge that on a golden platter, Nehru gave away 38,000 square kilometers of Aksai Chin to the Chinese and 73,000 square kilometers of POK, including Gilgit-Baltistan. So अपना certificate अपने पास रखिए. Thanks to Narendra Modi. In February
what are you doing since past 8 years? This is the opportunity. This is our chance.
Meghna, can I
Let
finish?
us show the world that we are powerful. Let us show the world we did not
Mr. Abbas Haider, please let's not talk over each other.
Can you please lower the fader of this, irrelevant?
Sanju Verma, if you can quickly, because I have a question for Mr. Chaudhary, I'd like to go across to him.
No, why are you feeling disturbed?
Thank you.
When you do the same thing to others, you should remember that same medicines will come back to you.
Finish my point.
Quickly finish your point. You have 10 seconds, Sanju Verma, and that's it. Sanju Verma, quickly make your point.
Finish my point if you're not able to moderate these guys.
We can hear you now. Go ahead.
Thank you. The people who give us a lecture on China refuse to acknowledge that for the first time in February 2021, even an aggressor like China was forced to voluntarily disengage post-Galwan, which has never happened. China has a dispute with more than 24 countries. It shares a border with more than a dozen countries for the first time. It was the Modi government that forced China to disengage to finger 8 of the Pangong Tso.
What happened to the red eye?
Those are again, of course, also the India's permanent seat at the UNSC was also granted away. However, Kamruzaman Chaudhary, I have a question for you. Can the party deny that you had even Rahul Gandhi coming out going one step ahead in his zeal to attack the Prime Minister, said who really benefited from Pulwama? Is that why today everyone's asking that the Congress is not going to let go of any opportunity for everything? It's a PR stunt, even a terror attack. Is that not true?
No, Meghna, if you want your debate to be an echo chamber, then please don't invite me from the next time. If you have called me up, then hear the other side also. The basic position that you have put out here does not hold good for us now. Because every time we try to criticize Mr. Modi's policies and his programs vis-a-vis the domestic policy or the international policy, these people from the ecosystem, they will try to turn it as a criticism of India as a nation. But how come criticism of Modi's policies is criticism of the nation? I cite 1 or 2 examples out here. When we had the Zakir Naik episode out here, then India banned all sorts of palm oil from Indonesia. After 1 year, we again restarted the import of palm oil from Indonesia.
We never banned
harakiri of foreign
palm oil.
policy.
That's
Then
the lie.
On that subject, let's stay on the subject. Go ahead, Mr. Chaudhary.
Please listen.
Sanju Verma, let Mr. Chaudhary complete.
Let me finish.
Let Mr. Chaudhary
Let me
complete.
finish.
We will not speak
Let
over
me
each other.
finish.
Mr. Chaudhary, complete your point.
I'm sorry.
But let's stay on the subject. Mr. Chaudhary, complete your point.
Let me finish.
Yes,
Let me
go ahead,
finish.
Mr. Chaudhary.
When Galwan happened, then what did we do? We banned the Chinese porn sites. That was our foreign policy initiative. Now when you have got such policies as G-20 is being used for election campaigning, will Sanju Verma try to rebut the fact that this is not wrong? Today Narendra Modi is in power. Tomorrow somebody else can be in power. Will you just justify that use of the national pride, the G-20 presidency for election purposes?
I'm just surprised because it's coming from a party which is known by its own president who had said Indira's India, India's Indira.
How come opposing Modi is opposing the nation. Explain to us.
Okay, Anand Ranganathan, let me bring in Anand Ranganathan because it's important for us to have a wider perspective again and again. Anand Ranganathan, that is the problem. Why are we confusing the two? Is BJP the government or BJP the party and Prime Minister a political rival but also a democratically elected Prime Minister of the country? Why do we keep confusing these?
No, let me explain, because I think Mr. Kamru, my good friend, has made a very interesting and good point, sensible point, which is what he's saying, that criticizing Modi or the BJP doesn't mean going against the nation. Absolutely correct. I stand with you, sir. Absolutely, 2000%. But then I ask you, when you oppose Modi, when he brought out the farm laws that were in your manifesto, that would have catapulted India to a middle-income economy in 15 years, double, triple, quadrupled the farmers' income. Then were you not anti-India? Answer this, yes or no, sir.
But then do you forget the demonetization?
Then why did
do you forget the note, sir?
No, then why did Mr. Modi repeal them?
I give up. I give up.
No, sir, why did Mr. Modi repeal them?
So
specific question. Is anyone on the panel ready to answer specific questions? There are at least 3 of you sitting on this panel itself. For all of those who say it's a lopsided, let me also point out there are 2 people who are trying to put out how India should be showcased, and there are 3 of you who are confusing, it seems, what India's agenda is and what BJP's agenda is. Anirban Banerjee, that has been one of the biggest problems. No one saying don't criticize the Prime Minister. I began the show by saying, yes, you may criticize the Prime Minister, you may criticize even the policies. You have every right to do so. It's very different to criticize the nation. Anirban Banerjee. Anirban Banerjee.
Okay, can I have my minute, please?
Mr. Chaudhary, you've had your say. Let Anirban speak.
Sir,
please speak
sir,
to
please.
him.
Just a moment,
let him speak, so that we are ideologically at least aligned when it comes to the time.
Since
Anirban Chaudhary.
Mr. Chaudhary, let Anirban speak. He's from the same ecosystem.
Since the time Mr. Jaishankar took over, I must... Arey sir, please come. Let me complete. Since when Mr. Jaishankar took over, I must admit that he has surpassed and overshadowed Mr. Modi when it comes to diplomatic relations with the international quarters. Very wide ambit he has, his exposure. Therefore, he is using his experience to improve upon the damage or the disaster that Mr. Modi had already created. He is the first Prime Minister, I think, in the history of our world who had gone to a foreign nation and campaigned for their election, one of the candidates. Abki baar Trump Sarkar. You know, there has been no bigger debacle in the history of diplomatic relations between India and United States. Mr. Jaishankar has already overshadowed Mr. Modi. We can see that, and therefore Mr. Modi, I think, is very insecure. He's feeling insecure.
You also, Sanju Verma, let him have a say. Whether you agree, disagree, we'll ensure that everyone gets a platform.
Stop this professional heckler first.
Anirban Banerjee, we have given you the time. So please utilize it.
This woman seems to be a compulsive heckler.
You want to spend your time criticizing Sanju Verma. Again, you want to criticize one person who have a national stage. Make your point. Make your point.
Modi.
Do you have an agenda outside Modi?
This Mr. Jaishankar is far better than
That's good, which is why he is at the helm of affairs. He is the one who stated what India's agenda is going to be at the G20. I don't understand the criticism here. Sanju Verma is the hatred for Modi surpassing almost everything.
India's agenda has to be India's agenda, not BJP's agenda. That is my simple point.
Sanju Verma, I am asking you a question, so please go ahead.
Why can't you teach the same lesson to yourself?
Can you please
Why
allow
don't
me?
you teach the same lesson to yourself?
Anirban Banerjee, please let Sanju Verma speak.
How does it feel now? How does it feel now?
If we are going to resort to heckling, then unfortunately is this level of political discourse we are resorting ourselves to and plunging India into. Sanju Verma, the hatred towards Modi
is exactly what she was doing.
Is over everything else. Is that overriding everything else, including this panel discussion? Sanju Verma?
Yes, because Anirban needs to know that I don't take personal shots at his leader, whereas the only thing he does is taking personal shots at the Prime Minister. That is the difference between you and me. I give logical arguments backed by facts. So please shut up. Now let me make my point.
Let's not have language like that.
You know,
Let's not have language like that.
Okay, so please shut up now.
We can't have language like that on the show.
We heard you. Please shut up. Okay.
Sanju Verma, please don't be personal. Let's not have that kind of language.
No, it's better that you shut up. It's better that you shut up. Because you are the one misbehaving, right?
My language is completely right.
You are the one misbehaving here right from the start.
You know, perhaps that's the problem. We are running out of time in this show, and that has been one of the biggest problems. In the cacophony of politics somewhere, the larger projection of India as a world power, which gets undermined even back home, has been one of the biggest problems in Indian politics. Unfortunately, we are running out of time. I'd like to thank our panelists for joining us here on the show. Hopefully, it is something which is going to be reflective of what has been happening in Indian politics. Yes, there are elections, but should elections and the prospects for elections take precedence over everything, including India? Perhaps it's time to introspect. But let's move on. This is the next big story that